My name is Danielle, and this is Trying Matters. If you're looking for a no BS type podcast, this is it. I'm here to help make life fun and interesting and learn right alongside you how to be brave enough to go against the grain. Here, we'll be talking about real challenges and fears that are holding us women back from living our lives to the fullest. So let's shake things up a bit and start trying. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. It is episode 3, and today we are going to be talking about being indecisive. If you're anything like me, this is probably something that we definitely need to talk about. And it's actually really relevant to me this week, which we'll get into a little bit later. So, um, if you are somebody who is as indecisive as me, we're about to dive into all of that. So, how many times have you been like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so indecisive?" Yeah, raise your hand. Give me a snap. That's me. Um, Recently, this has been just, I mean, honestly, all throughout life, we have decisions that we have to make, and this option versus that option, and there's a lot. There's always decisions from simple ones like, what am I going to eat for dinner? When I go to a restaurant, I'm like, oh, do I get what I always got, or do I get this new thing? Which, like, flip a coin. That's my go-to for that, by the way. That's tip number 1. um Simple things like, what do I want to eat for dinner, or what outfit should I wear, or should I paint this wall? I'm going to paint it, but it took me forever to decide to paint it. Simple things like that. And then we have more complex things, which that's really what we're going to get into today, is those complex decisions like, should I quit my job? Should I break up with this guy? Should I ask for a raise? Really big decisions that we face in our daily lives. And sometimes they can be ones that change the course of our lives. So we get a little bogged down with that. So we're going to kind of talk about that kind of stuff today. So, um, the place that I think we all kind of start with being torn between two different options and, doing our decision making dance is, me personally, I start creating a story in both directions. So usually there's something that kind of like catapults the need for change, right? For example, you're getting burnt out at work, or the guy you've been talking to is just like making you pissed off, or you're at work and you feel like you deserve more, and you're not getting it. So there's something that kind of like catapults. It's like, whoop, here we go. This is a problem. We need to change something, right? So what I tend to do, and again, give me some snaps if you are in your car listening to this and you're like, yep, that's me. The spiral, the spiral out of control of like the doom and gloom. We start using this extreme language, okay? And I know it ain't just me, girl. I know you over here doing the same thing. You're calling up your mom and being like, oh my gosh, everyone. I always, he never. Those words are the extreme words I'm talking about, okay? I remember being a kid using those words. And my mom would always tell me, like, it's not everyone, okay? Like, it is not everyone. You are not the only one. So let's change our words, maybe. Let's put this into perspective. But me, if something like bothers me, I'm automatically jumping into that spiral. And I catch myself saying things like, oh my gosh, everyone else always looks so cute all the time. Or no one else works as hard as I do. No one else. Or I'm always sacrificing for him. Always. I never get to do what I want to do in my free time. Never. Like those big extreme words. And then once we have this big story made up in our heads about all the bad and how it's always and never and only these big words, we start to create this other story that's like, well, If I get more cute clothes, then everyone will think I'm cute and ultimately everyone will like me more. Or if I get a new job, I won't be the only one working as hard. And if I break up with him, I won't always have to sacrifice. Um, and the list goes on, right? And there's two problems with both of those scenarios. So we have like the extreme language in the spiral story of the bad. And then we have the extreme language in the spiral story of the, oh, this is my solution. Two problems with that. One, like we already kind of mentioned before, the extreme language is just going to lead us to have this false belief in one or the other situation. So if we're believing the story, the bad story where like, oh my gosh, nobody likes me because I never dress cute. What? No, and not everybody dresses cute. Look, there is multiple days, most days I do not look cute. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're seeing today I am put together. This is a rarity. Most of the time, my hair is up in a clip. I have no makeup on, and that has nothing to do with why people like me. So that leads me into my second point with this extreme language and these stories that we tell ourselves is now we're trying to solve a problem with a solution that's not getting down to the root of what the problem is. And then it's setting us up for this unlikely expectation. We're setting ourselves up for, poor management of our expectations, which again snaps if you are sitting at home listening to this, washing your dishes, saying, oh, yep, I have a problem managing my expectations. That's me. That is me. Always. Again, there I go. See, I'm using it myself. Always, never. It's setting us up. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I currently am struggling with this. And if there's somebody else that's listening to this and you're relating to this is the stuff that we're talking about because it's problems that I'm hearing other people talk about and I'm noticing in myself. So I want to focus on it and I want to find ways that we can get rid of it together. So not me having it figured out, me telling you in real time like what's going on in my life and how I'm trying to work through it. So number 1, I'm trying to not use that extreme language all the time because it's setting me up for these incorrect perspectives and stories that are a little bit extreme and not entirely true. Which leads me into my next point. Um, Once we identify that problem, we steer away from the extreme language and we steer away from like, this is the problem, this is the solution, how we need to fix it in these very extreme ways. Let's talk about how we can, figure out the real versus the not real and ultimately get to the solution of what decision we should make because we're indecisive as can be. Okay, so obstacles that we are going to encounter. Ultimately, anytime we go to make a decision, we're going to have obstacles. So, we're talking about those scenarios, those what ifs. Like, okay, what if I break up with him and then I never find anybody else? Or what if I break up with him and he gets another girlfriend before I get a boyfriend? No, can't have that happen. Is that a reason why you should stay with him, girl? I'm gonna go with probably not, because that doesn't seem like we really be loving on him. You know what I'm saying? Um, what if I quit my job and I can't find another one with as good of a situation? Or what if I never get another job again? Again, there we go with the extreme language. Do you really think you're never gonna find another job again? I don't think so. And it may not be the same situation, but if we're trying to find another job, don't we want to not be in that same situation? Just think about that. And then, oh my gosh, what if I ask for a raise and they tell me no? It's okay. Another obstacle that we run into. So we have our scenarios. We run into all the what ifs. What if, what if, what if? We could go on for days with the what ifs, but guess what? We're never going to know unless we try it. Um, Pride and vanity. This one, if you're anything like me, this one gets in the way. And particularly, this was one of the biggest ones that I ran into this past week. Because just going to be fully transparent with you guys at this current moment, if you're listening to it in real time, I decided to quit my PRN job because I was getting burnt out. And I noticed that my pride was one of the reasons why I was not wanting to quit. And in that example of, wanting to quit my job, that's why I'm using that one as an example. If you couldn't pick up on that. Um, in that example, I was thinking, I make less money than my husband. And when I first met him, I thought I was going to be the breadwinner. I thought that I was going to be this money making machine and I was going to be the one, holding my own over here. And that's not my reality. I make less than my husband, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I had to realize that I was having an issue with my pride, and I had to swallow my pride and actually talk to him and say, like, hey, I have this really poor relationship with finances, and I feel like I have to work twice as hard so that I can keep up with your income, which is just totally unrealistic and not expected by him. And it was a pride issue. I was like, I need to be better. I need to make more. I need to earn my keep in my own home. No one ever told me that, and that's not the case. So, pride, vanity getting in the way. Other examples, since we're talking about, we're sticking with the same examples throughout this. So, the quitting the job example, that was my example of pride and vanity getting in the way. The example of pride and vanity getting in the way of, oh, I want a raise. Well, I've done really well here, and they should have already asked me for a raise. And if they don't, I'm getting out of here. Nah, we haven't asked yet. We haven't talked yet. Maybe we shouldn't be so prideful in our abilities, and maybe we should just, instead bring that to their attention to kind of form a discussion. And then another one for the example of our, should I stay in this relationship or should I not? Oh, he's so hot and he's going to make a lot of money. So, like, I really shouldn't break up with him. Or another perspective, oh, he was going nowhere in life until he met me. And now he is on the train to success town. And I did that. So I need to make sure that I stick around because, baby, he wouldn't be here if it wasn't for me. And I'm not going to let some other girl get him with all of his success now that I did. Let's put the pride to the back seat and focus on the real problem here. We're trying to decide if we want to be with him or not. Who cares if you made him better and somebody else is going to get him? That's actually a really good thing. Um, and who cares if he's hot and going to make a lot of money? Is that really going to sustain a relationship in long term? Another topic, excuse me, for another day. Another obstacle that you might experience, because I've experienced this, diminishing of feelings and priorities, or just justification, like trying to justify the reasons why, and just saying that your reasons for wanting to do something one way or the other is not valid. And again, give me snaps if you are listening to this right now and you were like, oh, yep, raising my hand, snapping my fingers, because I discount what I want all the time. Like, if you're with me, snaps, let's go. Diminishing my feelings. What I mean by that is, for my example of wanting to leave my job, I was like, well, it's okay that I don't get to meal prep or get my house in order after a full week of work, going into another week of work and, working a full weekend. It's okay that I work 14 days in a row. And you know what? It's really not that important to have my meals prepared for the next week, or for me to have all my clothes washed before I go into the next week, or for my house to be in order for the next week. That's really not all that important. When in reality, for me, that's the stuff that makes me feel calm. That's the stuff that makes my week run smoothly. And if I'm diminishing that, I'm saying that's not important. What truly brings me calmness and happiness and just some relaxation and not doing something for an entire day, which is necessary, that's not important enough. So I can't quit my job. We're diminishing that. we're diminishing what's important to us, and we're diminishing our feelings towards the true needs that we actually have. Um, the asking for a raise example, diminishing your feelings. I've gained a lot of experience and new skills on top of having a good score in my annual performance review, which should qualify me for a raise. But I've only been here for a year, so I really haven't earned a raise yet. You're diminishing the amount of worth and value that you have to whatever that company is or whatever that position is. You put time and effort into what you do. If you're anything like me, you don't just go to work, do work, and leave. Yes, there are days where that happens, but if you are doing your best every day, don't diminish that. That's really important. You are of value to that team or that business or whatever it may be. So we have to remember that when we're getting these little diminishing thoughts. And the last example of the should I break up with this guy or not? I've dreamed of living outside of the United States and maybe going to live in like Europe or something, but he doesn't want that. So I guess it's okay that I just don't because, well, we've been together for so long. Okay. So you're just gonna diminish your feelings and your wants for your and your goals for your life because you've been with somebody for a long time? Are we truly living our best life if we're putting aside the things that have been major goals in our lives for a long time because we've been with somebody for a long time and we're contemplating leaving them? Let's not diminish that goal, okay? If that's something really important and it's been on your heart for a long time, we don't want to just toss that to the side. That's really important. So we have the obstacle of the what ifs. We have the obstacles of pride and vanity. We have the obstacle of diminishing our feelings and our priorities and justifying why they're not good enough reasons. Then we have this one, another one. For me, this is a really, really big one, and I've done a lot of reflection on this, and it's something that it's an ongoing process for me. So again, snaps, if you're on the same boat with me, fear of someone else's opinion of you. If that could be just like the title, I think for all of us women, like we're all just concerned about what others are going to think of us. In this scenario, either the disappointment that's going to come from the decision being made, or them not wanting to be involved in your life anymore, thinking you're irresponsible for your decisions, or thinking you're ungrateful for the job that you have if you're asking for a raise, or um thinking that, oh, if I break up with him now, we've been together for so long, like, and he did this for me and he did this for me, he's going to think I just used him. Well, if you know in your heart that that's not the case, like, let's not use those as excuses to not get out of a situation that we are not 100% on. Let's use that as reasons in, I guess, agreement with, we would say, or like a pro of why we should leave the situation if it's something that's holding us back. Like, if we're concerned about what other people are going to think of us, that's not a good enough reason to stay in the situation that you're in, or to sway your decision into the staying versus the leaving. um People are going to think what they're going to think. If we based our lives off of what everyone else was going to think of us and how they were going to react, we would be living for them instead of living for us. And that is not the goal here. Okay. If that's how we're thinking, please stick around. We will change your mind about that. Okay. And the last obstacle that I feel like me and a lot of the people that I talk to have um, is breaking the rules. So, and this one is like, breaking the status quo, which shout out to High School Musical, stick to the status quo. No, let's base our lives more off of the end of that movie and like the second and third rather than sticking to the status quo like they do in the beginning. Okay. Deuces to the status quo. Okay. Um, breaking the rules. Like for me, and I'm gonna bring this in at some point. I love this topic, family of origin. And y'all probably heard me mention the Enneagram like here and there. Those two things are great tools for learning about yourself and figuring out what it is that kind of gets under your skin and why it gets under your skin, and why, when you're in the middle of trying to make a decision or you're in the middle of an argument, what is triggering you and how we can kind of better communicate around those situations. So breaking the rules for me a lot of times is breaking what I've been taught through my family of origin or just my personality, which that's where the Enneagram stuff comes in. If you want more info on that, y'all let me know when you tag me on social media, like if that's topics that y'all are interested in learning more about, and we can do some shows about that. I really love those topics. So I would love to, but if y'all are into it, let me know. So the example of like breaking the rules. So I was raised to work hard, and quitting would mean that I'm not a hard worker, or I have so much free time. So I might as well just work more since I didn't ask for that raise. Like, let me just keep working extra so that I can make up for the money that I maybe would make if I would have gotten a raise. Or again, he's done so much for me. It's so wrong to leave him at this point, even though our life goals are different and I can't see a future with him. Ooh, girl, break those rules, because they're not actual rules. They're rules that you created in your head that you've probably learned from your family or your friends or somebody that you worked with or whoever it may be. Maybe movies, social media. Y'all know me and media. We are not always friends, okay? I do this because I like to get the word out that what we see out there ain't reality, okay? Um, so break the rules that you think are there, but girl, they ain't. Those are not real rules. Okay, so those are your obstacles. My obstacles. Our obstacles. You may not have all these obstacles, but these are just some examples of things that we run into if we're in the middle of making a big decision. We're going to do the what ifs. We may have pride get in the way. We may diminish our feelings and do some justifying. We may have likely fear of what others are going to think in that decision that we make. And we have to feel like we're breaking the rules a little bit if we're really going back and forth between doing something one way versus another. Okay. So, when these things start coming up, we're going to talk about some little tips and tricks that can help us make the decision. So, I mentioned earlier, small decisions, flip a coin. Your phone can do it. Sometimes I actually have a coin. Like when I go to dinner, no lie, y'all, I literally tell Randy, my husband, um, can you flip a coin? Because I don't know if I want this or this. And no matter what the outcome is, if it's what I really wanted, I'm like, yes. But if it's not what I wanted, I go, oh. And then it still helps me make my decision. But that's for like small things. um, with that though, the point that I do want to just toss in here real quick, even though this is kind of out of order, um, actually it is a tip. This counts as a tip. So coin toss when you can't decide on your meal or your outfit if you're torn between two. That's when you have like a binary choice. Um, but if it's more than that, more complex, different. But the simple stuff, keep it simple. I do this all the time. And again, if you're driving right now, snap with me on this one. If you also do this, take things way too seriously. Like this small decision is going to make or break everything. Like me painting my wall. Okay, that is such a small decision. And I went back and forth with it for so long. And the reason I'm finally doing it now, or I finally decided to do it now, is because I'm like, I finally decided, like, I sat down and I figured out what I wanted this room to look like. But I was held back because I was like, the day that I go to sell this house, I can't have a hot pink wall, which it's not hot pink yet if you're watching on YouTube. It will be. I got my soundboards in today, so whoop whoop. Getting sidetracked. It's not so serious. If I do end up going to sell this house and a hot pink wall is likely not going to help sell the house, we'll paint the wall again. It's paint. It's not that serious. If I go to a restaurant and I get if I try something new and I end up not liking it, okay, well, it's not the last meal I was ever going to eat. So let's stop taking things so seriously and just chill. I think sometimes we get so tightly wound and we think a lot about this decision being like monumental, and it's really a small decision. So differentiating between, is this a big decision or is this a small decision? Like, can I flip a coin on this, or can I just say, F it, let's go and do it? Or is it a big decision where I need to actually, do more of the tips we're about to talk about? So, first thing, first tip number one, patience. If you are in the process of trying to make a big decision, patience is going to be essential. And I am preaching to myself again when I say this, because I have been contemplating quitting my PRN job for probably going on a year almost. But I kept coming up with all of those roadblocks that we talked about a little while ago. And I was like, no, I can't. Like, I have to. There's no real reason for me to quit. Like, no, I have to. Now, a whole year before I decided, no, I need to do this. Like, once I had all the material that I needed to actually make the informed decision, I made the decision. Okay. So, patience. If it is something big, it's not going to be an easy situation that's going to happen really quick. So, just going to say that. Factual evidence is my tip number two. So, this will help with the extreme language. Um, so, the always, never, I'm the only one, that stuff. This will kind of help with that. When you're stuck at a crossroads and you're like, okay, am I going to quit my job or am I going to stay in that job? Factual evidence. So for me, I had to look at my finances. Was this job truly bringing in enough money for me to say, you know what, without that job, I'm going to struggle? That was not the case. Once I found that to be part of my argument in, the quitting column, I said, okay, well, that is a factual bit of information. I can't argue. It's really not giving me all that much income. So is it really benefiting that much? If that was my main argument. Um, if we are looking at the argument for, should I go talk to my boss about getting a raise? Well, if you want to have some factual evidence there, look at how you've grown over the year. Truly build your argument. Okay, have you stayed stagnant, or have you like done poorly for the year? And if so, like maybe analyze like why, and kind of see, get your facts on that. Like for me, I've grown a lot this past year in my job. So I can pull out some facts on, I've expanded this in my scope of practice, and this and this and this. And I got this score on my annual performance. Um, and find out how your company does their raises. Like some places have like a hierarchy, and some places have, um, you know, if you get this score by the end of the year, then, you get this much. Find the factual evidence when you're having questions, kind of do your research and build up the argument for that side of the argument. Um, and then same thing with like the relationship thing. My mom used to tell me like, if the bad outweighs the good, it's time to go. I've stuck with that for a long time. It's a simple way to look at a relationship. Sometimes you need the simple, but what do you look at the facts there? Like, what are you truly getting out of this relationship? Like, is it just a comfort zone thing? And when it's really a comfort zone thing versus oh my gosh, I truly love this person. I want to be with them for the rest of my life, that kind of thing. Um, are your goals in life truly aligned? Are your uh, are your core values truly aligned? And if they're not, then you may have some issues there, and that could be something that's helpful to you in deciding, should I stay, should I go? Does the bad outweigh the good? What is the good here? Is the good your comfort? Because you can find comfort in a lot of other things and people, and if it's because you're scared to be alone, like that's not a bad outweighs a good situation. What truly is the factual evidence for why you are with that person, rather than something just surface level, um, emotion filled. This is something where I like to say, like, put the emotion to the side a little bit, and look at the facts of the situation without clouding it with the alwayses, nevers, onlys, that kind of language. um, Tip number 3: a pro and con list. Good old fashioned. Sometimes it just is helpful to write out your thoughts. I also tend to now voice memo on my phone if I'm having some thoughts, because then I can go back and I can listen to it, and I can hear kind of like my thought process, and I'm like, oh yeah. And if you listen to it like a day later, you're like, oh man, I have a different perspective now that I'm not angry about what it was, or now that I've heard somebody else's side of the story or something like that. Sometimes our perspectives change, and if we record it and listen back to it, sometimes it's helpful. Same thing with writing it down. Like, here are my list of pros, here are my list of cons. Sometimes, of course, it's not that black and white, it's a little bit more gray, but it still can help you with organizing your thoughts and kind of breaking it down in a way that is clearer than if you're just sitting there thinking and word vomiting everywhere. Um, I know me, just sometimes it just got to pen to paper. All right. This is number 4: talking to an unbiased, trusted person. Um, Reasons why I say unbiased is they can give you a perspective that somebody who is really intertwined in the situation cannot. um, Somebody that you trust also, because obviously you're not going to be talking about a major decision with just anybody. So somebody that you trust, somebody who's going to be able to give you a different perspective that's not super involved in this situation, and um, they're not going to let their emotions cloud it. And another thing with that is, try to keep it to like just one person that you talk to, because if you're anything like me, yet again, I am the one who wants to tell everybody my business because I want everybody's opinion, because I always feel like that's going to help me, and it never does. Like, the more opinions that I get, the less clear it is for me. And at the end of the day, I do know what it is that I want. And I end up gravitating towards that at the beginning and through that process anyway. So it's just kind of unnecessary. There's, one or two people that I go to with my really difficult decisions. And those are the people that I know are not going to let their own BS kind of get in the way. Like, there's people who tend to like project their own issues into their conversations. I know I've been guilty of that. I've definitely done that. Um, or they project like their opinions of whatever your situation is when you're asking them advice, and then it becomes biased. And then you're like, I listened to her, and now, like, I don't know, I just don't feel good. And then you want to go talk to somebody else, and then we start this whole cycle of this everybody else's opinion, and then we're not helping ourselves. We're just making it messier. It's like we dumped, I don't know, chocolate syrup all over the floor, and we're just putting a dirty mop on it. That's what I'm envisioning in my head. Um so try to stick to just talking to maybe one or two people about it, and making sure that you trust them to keep it to themselves, and also to not cloud in with their opinions, and they truly have your best interest at heart. And it is good to sometimes have the people who know you, because they can keep your history and your personality kind of in there. Like, I know sometimes when I talk to my best friend, she's like, now, that you when situations like this happen, you tend to act in XYZ way. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I know, I know. And like it does clarify sometimes, but you don't want that person to cloud with like, oh, you're past, you're past, you're past, you're past, to where it's like bogging you down. Um, you want it to be more of a like, let's talk through this, and I'm not going to project my opinions of your past or my opinions of this current situation or my issues that I'm going through into that situation. Okay. And then of course, if there's somebody else involved that this decision is going to impact, like for me quitting my job, like I had to talk to my husband about that because this was a decision that was going to impact our lives, not just my life, our life. So if there's someone else involved, include that person in the conversation and the decision making because they are just as important in that decision as you are. Okay. Last one, last tip that I'm going to give. And again, you could agree with this, you could not agree with this. I'm just throwing it in here because it's what I've been trying to do lately. Pray about it. Ultimately, you're not going to see this like big sign in the sky that says, this is what you should do. And you're not going to hear this loud voice that's like, this is what you should do. No, that's where patience comes in. And it kind of just reminds us that we're not in control. You never know what the outcome is going to be. You cannot control the outcome. That's not how life works. Um, Again, I am preaching this to myself a lot lately. There's no guaranteed outcomes. We have to trust that it is going to work out in the way that it needs to work out. And if it is not the desired outcome that we created in our mind at the beginning of this episode, that's okay. Because even in situations where it didn't work out how we wanted it to, I've started to, and this is again not something that I've mastered. I don't think you ever necessarily master this, but I've started to look at it in a way of everything is a learning experience. I used to think like, where's the positive in this? How can I be positive Polly? Or how can I find a silver lining? And I would hate when people would do that to me. Like if I'm sitting there complaining about something or I have an issue and I'm talking to somebody and they're like, oh, well, at least this, I would do that to people. And then I'd be like, oh, wait, I don't like when people do that to me. I just want them to listen. And they're trying to find positive things in a really not so great situation. Sometimes we don't need that. But there is hope in knowing that there could be part of the path that you don't understand or that you don't see. And they always say hindsight is 2020. God knows what his plan is for you. So sometimes we just have to let go. We have to surrender uh, and try to trust. No, we have to trust and have faith that he's got us. And even when it doesn't work out how we thought it would, something something is going to be learned from that. It may not be an immediate, it may be something that pops up later on. You're like, oh my gosh, if this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and this wouldn't happen, and boom. It's just like in movies and TV shows where they go back in time and they're like, don't touch anything, don't let anybody see you, because if we have one little moment that's ticked off, not how it was in the original, then boom, a whole course could be completely changed and wah, pretty much. Because if you will, like, you could track back and you'd be like, oh, well, if I wouldn't have had this experience, I wouldn't have done this, and I wouldn't have da 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 da, all of that. So sometimes we just need to let go of the control, let God have control, because we really cannot control all the outcomes, and we just have to be open to the possibility that it's not going to work out exactly how we think it is, exactly how that story that we told ourselves at the beginning of the identification of the problem, like it's probably not going to work out that way or how we envisioned it in our head. And that's tough to do. I'm not saying I got that figured out because, again, I don't think we ever have that figured out. But just remind yourself when you're like, oh my gosh, it didn't work out how I wanted it to. Ah! That's when we go woosah and we say, dear Lord, and then word vomit to him because he got you like this. I'm holding my hands up for those of you who are not watching me. Okay, so those are our tips for getting through decisions. We need to be patient. If it's a big decision, it's not going to happen quick. We need to look at the facts. What are the facts? Write them down. Let's do a pro and con list. That's number 3. Talk to an unbiased, trusted person and talk to the person that is involved in the decision if it's going to impact them. And then pray about it. I'll say it almost every time. It's important. I'm learning how to do it. Learn with me. We're in this together. Okay. Now, the aftermath of the decision. Because I realized this, and this is the whole reason why I wanted to talk about this topic. Because, like I said, I was contemplating quitting this job for about a year. And when I finally submitted my letter of resignation, I immediately had a bunch of different emotions. And I know I've experienced this so many times. And I, I'm just like, ah, I think we forget about it because we have this ideal picture in our head, like I said, of, if I quit the job, then I'll have more free time. If I do this, then that. Like very matter of factly. And we paint this picture and create this story, and then we do it and we're like, ah. Sometimes we have the aftermath feeling of relief. Ah, I'm free. I don't have to worry about that place anymore. And I don't have to worry about those people anymore. And I don't have to deal with, I broke up with him. So now I don't have to deal with his crazy brother or his mean, I don't know, dog. I don't know, whatever your reasons are, there's relief. You're like, yes, I don't have to stress about this anymore. That's the good part. But of course, there's other parts that you experience, or at least I do. And this is the one that really got me as I was walking out after I submitted my letter. Guilt. Oh, the pang of guilt. It was just like, boom, stab. I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I feel so guilty. Why did I just quit? They need me. Like, they don't have enough staff for weekends. And I've had to pick up extra because they don't have enough. Like, they need me to be there. Like, why would I quit on them? Or oh my gosh, like, I I don't know. I'm running out of examples. I ain't even gonna lie to y'all. I'm not about to pretend. But the guilt. There's guilt around everything. Like, oh, I feel so guilty that I dumped him, and he's going through a lot right now. No, girl, he wasn't good for you. You weren't in a good situation. It's okay to get out. No, that job was not doing me much benefit. It's okay that I got out. Yes, they have people that are still running that place. And yes, they can find somebody else to fill my position. I don't have to feel guilty. I have to remind myself of those things. It's not easy for me to turn off the guilt switch, but I have to constantly remind myself, like, you made an informed decision. You don't have to feel guilty about it. It was a good decision. You know it was a good decision. It felt right in your heart. And you didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to quit. Same thing with regret. That one also popped in. I was like, oh, am I going to regret this? What if a full-time position comes and this place is closer to my house? No. If something pops up, it pops up. But right now, it's not a good fit for me. There's no regret there. There shouldn't be. And even though there is, I have to, again, actively remind myself. That's what I'm doing. I'm reminding myself that what truly am I losing here? What am I gaining? What can I focus on that I'm gaining by doing this? The other example that I used with the regret is like, if I wouldn't have broken up with him, I would be married by now and I would have kids and I'd be settled. And again, we're going back to this picture of like the what ifs and the non-realistic picture that we painted in our head of what we thought it would be like. And do we really think that that would be the outcome if we would have stayed in said situation, if we would have made a different decision? We can't focus on the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, the what ifs, because you never know how it's going to work out. And that's okay. You just got to roll with it. You got to roll with it and be accepting of your reality. And again, that's not easy to do, but you made an informed decision. Remind yourself when you're feeling the regret. Remind yourself when you're feeling the grief. Not the grief. That's the wrong G word. The guilt and the regret that you made an informed decision. It wasn't just a decision on a whim. We had valid reasons. And with that being said, that's the adjustment period. So we're going to feel all the feels. And I'm sure there's other feels that a lot of other people have when they make a big decision to do something that could, be kind of life altering. But we have to learn to just cut ourselves some slack. And again, I'm preaching to myself when I say this. Cut yourself some slack. We're not perfect. If you listen to episode 2, you heard the discussion about perfection. It does not exist. We hold ourselves to a really high standard. We are our toughest critics. And while that can be beneficial at times, we have to also remind ourselves of how good we are, and that it's all about growth, and it's all about, figuring it out as we go and giving ourselves grace, because we don't know what we're getting. It's just like Forrest Gump said, life's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. And yes, I did have to look down at it because I want to make sure I said it exactly right, because I add in some other words all kinds of times every time I'm quoting. But it's so true. Like, you don't know what life is going to bring you. And if we stay in this rigid state of trying to keep control and going back and forth between making certain life choices and never really getting anywhere because we're just stuck and we don't have tools to get us out of the stuck, it just kind of gets bummy. We don't like it. If you use these kinds of tools and you remind yourself of, we're not robots, we're humans. We're not numbers, like I said in the last episode. We never know what's going to get thrown at us. We do kind of have to roll with the punches. We're not in control. And if we're using information and, making our pros and cons list and talking it out with somebody we trust and all of that, you're making an informed decision. And at the end of the day, your decision is going to be valid because it's your thoughts, it's your ideas, and you have your reasons. You don't have to explain your reasons to anybody either. If there is something that you feel pulled towards or called to, and you really make time to think about the true reasons why, that's valid. And we can push that regret and that guilt to the side, and we can keep rolling and trying a new chocolate every now and then, I guess. Okay, so that is it. That is episode 3. We are going to be better at making our decisions. And, by we, I'm 100% including myself in that. I'm working through this situation of, feeling the feels after leaving a job that, kind of got me into my full-time position now. It's crazy. But if you're feeling torn between making a decision, listen to this again, follow those tips. And if you just need somebody to just chat with because you're just like, oh my gosh, I need a word vomit to somebody, message me. Call me up if you got my number. And we can just, chit chat, get it all out. I can be your unbiased person. Yay! That would be fun. Okay. All right. Well, this episode's been long enough. I'll talk to y'all later. See you next time. And don't forget to let me know if y'all like that idea about the Enneagram and family of origin topics. If you don't know what they are, go look them up. They're good stuff. Okay. Bye for real. Thank you so much for listening in. I hope you got a little inspiration to start taking steps towards whatever it is you've been wanting to try. If you love this episode, share it on socials and tag me. I'd love to hear how it helped you. And of course, we got to get the word out to the other women who are needing that little extra push like you and I do. Can't wait to talk to you soon.